Every Nintendo console has always been a step to the side, not just forward. GameCube, Wii, Switch, they all had unique names, unique features, and most importantly, unique philosophy. Even when Nintendo 3DS came out, despite similarities with DS, the company made it clear, this isn't a continuation, it's a completely new console with a new idea, not a sequel. And now, for the first time in Nintendo's history, everything's changing. Switch 2, this is the company's first console with a number in its name. And this isn't just a small detail, it's the key to everything. For the first time, we're getting a direct sequel, not a new platform from scratch. And that's exactly what explains my mixed feelings about this console. But let's go through everything step by step. Today we'll figure out how Switch 2 differs from past revolutions, and why it might not be able to repeat the success of the first Switch, and how piracy ties into all of this. This is a Switch 2 review, enjoy watching. Well, let's start with the unboxing. Nintendo didn't skimp on what's included. First, we're greeted by the console itself, with two separate Joy-Cons lying next to it. Underneath, there's a bunch of accessories. Power adapter with a detachable Type-C cable, HDMI with the dock station, a grip for the Joy-Cons to play on TV, and even special plastic attachments to use Joy-Cons instead of a mouse. And you get all this for $450 official dollars, or 470 euros. Plus, there are already two bundles at launch, one with just the bare console and another with Mario Kart, which cost $80 separately but only $50 extra with the console. But instead of getting a full cartridge, you just get an activation code. Though apparently accepting the secondary market reality, Nintendo added a feature for electronic cartridges that you can share and theoretically even resell. This might even be connected to the company's new pricing policy, where their new games will cost $80. Well, on the secondary market, that's up to your negotiations. Visually, the console looks more modest than the previous model, with black Joy-Cons, and size-wise, it's like a steamroller ran over it. It stayed just as thin but became way bigger, and if Steam Deck was called big, well, Switch 2 almost catches up to it, and visually they really look similar. But in your hands, Switch 2 still feels more compact, whether it's because of the thin body or the lighter weight, even though it's only 100 grams less. The size increase is justified by several things. First, the screen. It got bigger. From 6.2 inches it grew to about 8, while also getting HDR support, which makes colors more vibrant and realistic. Though compared to OLED, it still loses out. Here, Nintendo left room for maneuvers in the future. But even so, the screen quality is just amazing. But the brightness? Unfortunately not. It's definitely not enough, and you won't be playing outside in sunny weather. However, the screen resolution also increased to Full HD, and frame rate up to 120 FPS. And this is really noticeable. Just like the bezels around the screen, which still haven't gone anywhere, but I can't say they're annoying. It's a matter of habit. Plus, there's already a protective film on the screen from the factory, which isn't recommended to remove. And if you want to put on tempered glass, apparently you'll have to stick it over the film. Not sure about that one. On the back, there's a new kickstand with a metal base and flimsy plastic in the middle. But if you pull from the sides instead of the center, I think nothing should break. There's a Type-C port on top and bottom, a bunch of regular buttons like power and volume. Well, the second size change is the Joy-Cons, and here's where the nuances start. First, the sticks. Everyone remembers how they drifted and broke on the first model. So here, it feels like the same mechanism. Nintendo claims they made it more protected, but it's really unfortunate that these still aren't Hall effect sensors, since with physical contacts, the drift risk remains. But the stick caps got bigger, and the buttons are more pleasant. But again, apparently for portability, there are no grips for holding. Here you'll have to buy either cases or separate Joy-Cons from companies like Hori. And the sticks themselves are the same height as on the regular Switch. And I remind you that aiming in first-person games, especially shooters, was extremely uncomfortable with them. Here the situation is slightly better, but still not at the level of full-fledged gamepads, or at least Steam Deck with other handhelds. But the magnetic connectors are a cool feature. At first I was worried they'd somehow fall out or not hold securely, but under its own weight, the console doesn't disconnect from the Joy-Cons even if you shake it. But how it'll work with, say, custom cases that add weight to the console, only time will tell. Because you can pull out the Joy-Cons without even pressing the button on the back, which just pushes out the top part of the Joy-Con. Another non-obvious downside is that Joy-Cons can be attached either way, including backwards. They won't work then, of course, since the contacts are only on one side, but it looks incredibly weird. Plus, the contacts inside raise some concern that they could break off. But Nintendo apparently said they're made from flexible material, so this shouldn't happen. But again, time will tell. Otherwise, they feel like just enlarged versions of the first Joy-Cons, so your hands fit perfectly. By the way, not everyone knows this for some reason, but haptic feedback first appeared not in DualSense, but in the first Switch. So in the second one, Nintendo didn't copy Sony's idea, but just refined their existing technology. And now HD vibration became even more precise. In the Welcome Tour demo, you can feel the difference between surface textures or precisely determine the direction of an explosion. This isn't just vibration, it's tactile feedback on a new level. Though after DualSense, it's not as surprising anymore. But Xbox doesn't even have this. But what I can't understand at all is buttons instead of analog triggers again. Well, why not make them like everyone else? In racing games, you can't modulate the gas, in some shooters the pull strength and shooting. Though in shooters, many actually like clicks with short travel. But I don't know, I prefer the regular variants. Also, why not make two versions with smaller dimensions right away instead of waiting several years? For people who specifically bought Switch Lite because they needed a maximally compact console, completely unclear. Just as unclear why the average user should rush and give their hard-earned money for a new console when there aren't that many launch releases. The first Switch came out paired with Zelda, which many bought the console for. Switch 2 comes out with Mario Kart World, which isn't bad and is even innovative for its genre, giving an open world with tons of activities. But personally, it didn't click for me. Purely a taste thing. Yeah, racing around an open world like Forza Horizon is interesting, but the races themselves aren't really different from previous series entries. But the updated Zeldas are cool. Each got a next-gen patch that increased texture resolution and generally improved graphics, so much that you want to replay each game again. Especially Tears of the Kingdom, which clearly struggled on regular Switch without overclocking. But these patches cost $10 extra if you already own these games, and that's at least understandable. But buying the Welcome Tour demo where you just walk around the console and see how everything works, with mini-games for $10, when PlayStation had Astro's Playroom, which was way better and free, that's penny pinching in my opinion, but that's Nintendo. Third-party companies also got busy and rolled out updated versions, or just their ports. For example, Cyberpunk plays no worse than on Steam Deck. Just thanks to the bigger screen resolution, the picture seems slightly sharper to me, but I didn't notice any colossal difference. Actually, sorry, I did notice one. Nintendo got two graphics preset options, like on modern consoles, where it's either 30 frames with maximum beauty or 40 to 50 but with worse graphics. From the updated ones, the same Hogwarts Legacy looks playable, way better than regular Switch, but again, be ready to pay an extra $10 for the update if you already bought the regular version. And it's like this with almost everything, either full price or pay extra for the new version. Or as a third option, wait until the game comes out. Much of what's promised is expected soon. Nintendo decided not to roll everything out at once and divided content in portions, so you definitely won't be bored. And while waiting for these games, if you've finished everything that came out, you can run backward compatibility. It's almost 100% here, only a couple games aren't supported, but all popular titles run. But they look terrible, if not worse, since they were made for 720p and on full HD the pixels literally jump out at you. And that's despite many not getting a special patch like the Zeldas. But Nintendo and Nvidia are apparently working on an upscaler and promise to roll it out soon. And when two companies with a big N work on something, you want to believe everything will work out, and then it'll be really good. Though what an upscaler definitely can't fix is battery life. It's clearly better than most handheld PCs here, but surprisingly not better than Steam Deck OLED. About the same level. An hour of Cyberpunk drains the battery by about 45%. Weaker games will obviously last longer, but the same Mario Kart World is apparently so demanding that it's not far from Cyberpunk in consumption, draining the battery in about 2 to 2.5 hours. I honestly hope for more, since ARM architecture is more energy efficient than x86, but in the end, even if that's true, the small 5220 mAh battery won't last more than 6 hours even in weak games, or about 2 in demanding ones. These are Steam Deck numbers, I remind you. So it'll be very interesting to do a comparison when more games come out, since judging only by Cyberpunk isn't really fair. Star Wars Outlaws is coming in a couple months, then we'll see. The dock station deserves separate attention because now outputting to even 4K TVs, not to mention full HD, isn't a compromise with blurry visuals, but quite pleasant gameplay with sharp picture quality at PS4 or Xbox Series S level. So now this is really a hybrid console, not a handheld with the ability to output to an external screen. And that's cool, especially considering it comes in the base package, since other handheld PCs don't usually come with dock stations. And thanks to a separate cooler, it doesn't overheat or throttle even when outputting 4K. But in dock mode, it starts making noise. But in handheld mode, it plays almost silently, so it actually looks pretty good, except game prices bite, but that's Nintendo. And here many will surely remember hacking, like maybe in the future you won't need to pay for games, though that's questionable. Don't forget that piracy contributed significantly to the first Switch's popularity. You can argue forever about what came first, the chicken or the egg. More precisely, does hacking popularize the console, or does console popularity motivate hackers to try running unsigned code more eagerly? But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, though denying additional purchases thanks to hacking definitely isn't worth it. I know at least several people who have two Switches, one for hacking, another for online with legitimate games. So with hacking on the second generation, Nintendo clearly wanted to put an end to it. And so far, everything points to them being quite successful. It's logical that no hack from the first Switch works on the second. Neither MIG switch, nor flash firmware, nor memory overflow and such. Moreover, even a simple attempt at hardware analysis blocks the console, and without an existing hack at the moment, it literally turns into a brick. It's possible that with the emergence of a hack they can be brought back to life, but that moment is clearly still far away, since the new NVIDIA Tegra T239 processor has a separate dedicated security block responsible for blocking known key extraction methods. And that's just one mechanism in a whole chain. Of course, this won't affect the console's success worldwide. I'm sure many will buy it without hacking if Nintendo rolls out a new Zelda, even just to replay old ones with better graphics. But repeating the first one's success is unlikely without this factor, especially when there are handheld PCs like Steam Deck with cheap games on Steam. In the end, impressions of Nintendo's new console are maximally mixed. At first, I admit I was a bit skeptical about buying the second Switch at launch, simply because there aren't that many games for it and you could wait until both games come out and prices drop a bit. But after playing the new Zelda, well, the updated one with 60 frames and full HD, running Cyberpunk which looks the same as on Steam Deck, now putting off the purchase doesn't seem like a good idea anymore. Yeah, obviously Switch won't replace a full PC like Steam Deck does, you can't download all Steam games on it and you need to wait for special ports, and you can't pirate on it either. But as a console with small thickness, less weight and size compared to handheld PCs that runs modern games, that's cool. But the Big N's pricing policy against existing competitors will clearly make many choose the latter. But in a vacuum, forgetting about prices, I liked the console. Switch 2 isn't a revolution like the first Switch, but an evolution. And there are pros and cons to this. Pro, Nintendo didn't reinvent the wheel and improved what was already working. Con, this might not be enough to repeat the original's phenomenal success, which, I remind you, launched without any competitors at all. Time will tell if Nintendo Switch 2 can find its audience in a world where competition among portable gaming devices is getting tougher. But one thing's for sure, the gaming industry became more interesting with another serious player in the portable gaming market.